Wyoming has a lot of old houses in general, not historic, but just old houses. So we structure this presentation into two groups, just in general sustainable principles, what we can do to these homes. And then we will go over two case studies, one from Chuck, one from Sanyog, and they will show you how they achieve LEED certification on their buildings. Just want to have a little quick survey here. Any of you own any historic structures or houses here from the audience? Quite a few. That's great. Any guest outside from Wyoming? Not from Wyoming here? Anybody from city of Wyoming? I think we have a couple guests. I think the staff members. Okay. All right. And I think there are no other architects here. All of them are here. I know that there is one construction company represented here, Bishel, right? So I'm identifying people, those could be our resources when we go over the presentation. Our presentation is structured towards sustainability, not aesthetics of historic homes. But we have a resource here, Tana. She's with the city of Wyoming, and they just worked on a design guideline for historic properties. So she's a really great resource. So if there are any questions comes during the presentation about window replacement, can we do solar panel? We have a resource right here and we can direct those questions to her. So sustainability, we want to start with a good quote, and I'm not going to read, but I want you to read that. And the quote here represents what sustainability and resiliency is truly, because it is not a one generation thing. It's a multi-generational thing. It's a heritage we're going to pass on to the next generation. So we wanted to keep this presentation very broad, on a broad terms. So even if we wanted to talk about LEED, USGBC, there are a lot of other certifications. And I'll call on either Sanyog or Jim to talk about some of these systems.
Sure, I'll start with the U.S. Green Building Council. As everyone who is not familiar with the U.S. Green Building Council, basically it is the founder of LEED. LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, and it governs the rating system for our certification process. So everything that we're covering today is really a basis from the U.S. Green Building Council. And the additional, the Well Building Institute is more so focused on humans, the human impacts in our buildings. So whereas the U.S. Green Building Council is geared towards the building itself and how it impacts climates, the International Well Building Institute is more so geared towards the occupants inside. And I'll let Sanyog or Chuck discuss maybe Living Building Challenge.
Yes, Energy Star is important, especially for, you might have heard, the 2030 district that's in Greater Cincinnati. So 4 years ago, they created this district in downtown Cincinnati that illustrates a commitment to reduce your energy use by 50% by 2030. So I got involved with the CAC. They invited me to be a board member to help them manage that and try to reduce the energy usage of that building. But the Energy Star ties in because you input all your data into the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. It's a very easy platform, but it's a very significant national organizations, represents the fact that companies and businesses and are really leading the change for sustainability. We're not waiting for the government to mandate these different improvements in energy efficiency. So that's where Energy Star comes in, as well as how those buildings can be certified as well.
Maybe one key feature that I could point out amongst all of these rating systems would be LEED, Living Building Challenge, Green Globes, and the one at the bottom right, NGBS Green Certification. All of them tend to be holistic sustainability certifications. They don't just focus on energy efficiency. They'll focus on location, landscaping, water efficiency, materials, all aspects of sustainability they'll focus on. Energy Star focus is a little bit narrowed, as the name suggests, on energy of it. And uniquely, the International Well Building Institute stands out. It focuses on wellness. So different from rest of the rating systems, it actually looks at buildings as not just buildings that are brick and mortar, but it actually looks at occupants that are occupying the building, and how does the environment have an effect on the body of the people who are occupying it. So that's the starting point of the well rating system. So literally, it would look at all of our systems in the body, your digestive system, your respiratory system, and so on. And as we navigate through buildings and use buildings, how do buildings affect us positively or negatively in those? And that generates that wellness well certification system. It's gaining a lot of traction in the last few years, especially with the last 3 years that we've had with COVID. The well certification system is getting a lot of attention. And then I think Green Globes and BREEAM, similar to the holistic rating sustainability rating system, they do stand out because Green Globes is, it comes out of Canada. So it started in Vancouver, British Columbia, and then now obviously it's prevalent in the US also. And then similarly, BREEAM is out of England, it's out of Europe. So those are some basic differences. But at the end of it, all of these are green building certification systems that allow you or give you a framework to certify, to make a building more sustainable.
Well, thank you. You will hear these buzzwords as time goes on. These are all buzzwords are just they're gonna catch up in Cincinnati, especially the WELL certification. Most of the healthcare institutions, they are going after that because that's what they want to do. They want to heal the bodies. So they are investing in evidences where you can create a building environment which gonna positively impact the patients. We want to start with this map. If you can see, the yellow zone is climate zone 4. Hamilton County is in climate zone 4, and after Monroe is climate zone 5. The way it impact is that you can see that climate zone 5 is much colder than climate zone 4, but Cincinnati is like 20 miles south of climate zone 5 line. What does that mean is that the tundra or the frozen tundra we had around the holidays, that line just shifted a little south. Our homes are designed for climate zone 4. That means 1 degree Fahrenheit temperature, our structure can survive. But when it goes down 0 degree for longer, 4, 5, 6 days, you're gonna have issues in a lot of structures. Iowa hospitals and schools, they have a lot of damage during that time because pipes couldn't survive. Very basic things, that's the insulation and thermal properties. So the importance of this map is that even if we are in climate zone 4, we can't predict the weather because we are in a swing zone. So we always recommend anybody who is investing in their structures, go above and beyond, because you never know. This is an ASHRAE table. There are a lot of figures on that. What we are trying to show you here is that if you go by the energy code requirement, it has R value of 20. And I bet that none of our homes has an R value in the wall equivalent to 20. If you go to the new code, it's even higher. So to begin with, if you have a historic home or home before 1960s, we are starting at a huge disadvantage because those homes were never built for that. So if you are building a new construction right now, they will consume about 1/4 energy than our home. It's just the illustration. We wanted to make a point here that we have a lot to catch up when we are thinking about making our home sustainable or go towards a LEED certification. These are some of the principles for the LEED, and Jim, you will cover that. So the rating system has like 40, 50 different credit, but these are some of the areas LEED certification focuses on.
Yeah, I'll just add actually that this is going in hierarchy of the importance of the LEED scorecards. So number one importance here for LEED The energy rating system is global climate change, followed by human health. Next, we have our water resources, which is more so our water conservation measures that we're looking at in the homes. Then biodiversity, sustainable and regenerative material cycles. That has to do with everything that we're using in our new construction or renovations for our building materials, which here in Cincinnati we do have quite a few green resources for locating and using those materials. And next, green economy, and also following that is the community quality of life, always thinking about the community with our LEED certifications. And next we have an example of a project checklist, which is a local Cincinnati home. And maybe I'll let Sanyog discuss this. This is an example project of one of his certifications that he's done for a residential home.
Earlier, we talked about LEED certification as one of the options for green building certification. Within LEED, as some of you may know who are working in the architecture or construction field, that there are several types of users of buildings. There's a commercial building, residential building. So LEED, very soon, it started as a rating system back in 1996 is when the first LEED rating system was developed. They started with just one rating system, but 4 or 5 years down the road, realized that one size is not going to fit all for all projects. So around 2008, they developed a residential rating system, LEED for Homes rating system, which applies to single-family homes or even multifamily homes. It started off with single-family homes. The primary reason for them starting with the single-family certification was single-family homes are built differently. They're made out of wood frame construction, as opposed to commercial buildings might have bigger systems that are different. So, so it talks the language of how the homes are built, who the contractors who are building them, and how can it allow them to make the building more sustainable.
So ways to green historic buildings. Now, before we go into the case study, we want to show you some of the high-level principles. Energy audit. How many people took advantage of energy audit? Some of them are free. We have one, I did, a few there. Energy or sometime energy companies provides incentive for you to do energy audit. What energy audits does is that it will pressurize your house. So it will say all the leaks around the windows or doors, weather stripping. If you have firewood chimney, which I do, I mean, unless you close it properly, it's a huge waste of air, because it's always bleeding the air. So energy audit is the lowest hanging fruit. If you do that, you're gonna figure out where you are losing energy, because air is the source of losing energy. And ask us question anytime if you want to know about resource or anything, please.
So would Duke Energy provide that as a service? Are there companies that provide that as a reasonably priced service in Cincinnati?
Greater Cincinnati Energy Alliance had a program that allowed level 1 audits, which is like a walkthrough and some basic recommendations on energy efficiency.
That yes, I think it was also funded through Duke Energy, and I don't know if it's still active, but it was. And that energy audit included a blower door test as well, which is basically they close off your doors and suck all the air out of the house, and you can see where you have holes, where you might have leaks around your windows or doors, which is very eye-opening when you realize where all your leaks are.
So Duke, they offer those incentives a certain time of the year, and that comes back. So if you go to website and you don't find, normally you will see that they offer a certain time of the year. So, and there are a lot of private contractors who do that. It's reasonable compared to what you're gonna save over the few months. The next one is doors and windows. If you still have historic windows and doors, I call them a hole in a wall. I mean, they're not doing anything. And we have to be very sensitive about that, because they are historic. If we are replacing, we need to make sure we are following guideline. There are some of the manufacturers who are actually making historic for historic windows and doors for historic structures, which we use for commercial buildings and universities. So there are products out there. There are sources out there where you can do it. So if you still have single pane window, you should think about that. It's a hole in a wall. A building envelope, we're gonna discuss that a little bit further. So I'm gonna skip that. But building envelope means, again, brick or siding. Are there any airs? Are there any gaps? Any holes? Take care of it. If they are not insulated, make sure to insulate them. And passive and heating cooling. If you already have a structure, that does not apply a lot, but you can, if you are doing an addition, you can think about where you are adding windows. South facing, west facing, how much sun you're gonna get. Do you want that much sun, or you don't want that much solar heat gain? So some of those things we can. There are a lot of simulations which can predict energy analysis based on your structure and the location and any evergreen trees around or not, and that factors quite a bit. Renewable energies, we will cover later also, but they are getting more affordable because of their return on investment. It used to be 16 years in some of the systems. Now they're about 10 years. When I bought my house in Wyoming, I thought I'm gonna do it. It was 15 year, and I thought, I don't know if I'm gonna stay in this house for 15 years, so I didn't do it. But 10 years is pretty reasonable time. Solar, same thing, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about it, but Wyoming allows solar panel on historic house as long as they are not visible from right of way. That's a perception in a lot of historic districts that solar panels are not welcome, but we just have to pick the right facing. That's the example of, we're gonna go over the case study, but that's the example of one of the house in over the Rhine. Landscaping. I like green lush lawn, and I sometimes irrigate, but irrigation is, Sanyog probably will say that it's a waste of water. And or versus invest in a hardy and local plant and vegetation, have a rain garden, native flowers versus big lawn. So we're gonna cover that as well. And you saw that Energy Star, right? So Energy Star appliances, or if you read the consumption, if you add up all of them, including your light, it adds up quite a bit. So that's pretty easy thing to do. Check appliances and check the lighting. Also water, sink. Reusing and salvaging material versus redoing it or using local material is another LEED credit point, and it's sustainable choice. Now we're gonna go over the exciting part. I really like this case study by one of the projects from Sanyog.
It's exciting to share this project. This is, I mentioned earlier, primarily we do consulting, sustainability consulting, but we do very little bit of design also. This is one of the projects I was the architect for it, and also we did sustainability consulting on. It's a 1870 historic home in over the Rhine. So the image that you're seeing right in the middle is the Myers-Ekman home. When the couple, Christian Myers and Chris Ekman, when they purchased it, probably around 10 years ago is when they purchased it. It was a dilapidated structure. It was not occupied. It was boarded up. I have a couple of images that I'll show on that. Also make a note of the building that's to the right of it. I will reference that building because before we started working on Myers-Ekman project, we had actually worked a little bit on that building to the right, which was a Habitat for Humanity project that we used in that life cycle assessment study that we did in 2008 and 2011. So I'll talk a little bit about that when appropriately. So this is sort of before pictures. As you can see, the 1870 home, the picture that's on the far left is boarded up condition when the owners acquired the property. You can see that the chain link fences at the back. There is a non-contributing historic addition at the back, which you can see up here. This is the front of the building, which is on Elm Street in Over the Rhine, where the streetcar goes. So this was before the streetcar was there. If you go there today, the streetcar is literally 10 steps away as you walk out of this front door. And yeah, literally, I mean, right here is where the streetcar goes today. And then this is still the front yard. This is the back of the home with that non-contributing addition, which was done sometime in the 60s or so. And this is us probably standing, myself and the couple, Myers Ekman, standing up there and reviewing that property back in, I think this might be close to 6 or 7 years ago. Yeah. And then that's the labor of love. After 5 or 6 years of working on this project, it was a slow process. Primarily, the owners had their home. They didn't have to move in right away, so they were making sure that they did what they renovated it the way they actually wanted it. So the front elevation you're seeing on the right, and at the back, what you're seeing is the addition. So it was an expansion of that home, addition of the home, and renovation of the home. So from the backside here, this brick building that you see is the existing building. And then the addition is at the back of this house. Plus, we also expanded the home at the top to gain a little bit more height on the upper floors and also provide a deck on the front, which is hard to see in this image, but up above this cornice is a deck that the upper addition walks out onto. So it's a wonderful space, actually. And then this gives you a roof aerial view of the building that shows you the addition and also shows you the solar panel. And the landscaping, which referenced, what Crew was talking about, sustainable landscaping, native plants, which require very little water. And there's another unique feature. I don't have a slide on this, but this home also has an underground stormwater retention system that actually collects all of the rainwater, stores it into the underground system, and reuses it for landscaping. And this is the photograph on the left is from the lower level looking to the outside and into the backyard. And then the kitchen, the modern kitchen, which one of the key pieces that we were doing in the design is celebrating the historic character of the building and maintaining it at all points. And then as we are transitioning from the addition into the modern spaces, at all points we are trying to celebrate all of those historic elements. So this was the original brick wall that's been exposed. And then on this side, you can see the existing wall, the trim and the doors and everything is existing to the greatest extent possible. The flooring is existing. The baseboard is existing also. And then this is another picture that shows you in the areas, in the historic portion of the home, all of the trim, flooring, contributing features of the home have been retained in its entirety. And then just a picture of the solar panels, the renewable energy piece of it. So we did achieve LEED Platinum certification. One of the things I think Chuck might talk a little bit later about is the unique, the city might know about this, the property tax abatement that City of Cincinnati offers, which is unprecedented. I have a close friend of mine who went to school with me way back, and she works for UN. And she works in Geneva, in UN. And she was telling me, so what is this tax abatement in Cincinnati that I hear about? So as you know, that it is truly unprecedented. Yeah, that a lot of jurisdictions don't believe how much money would have been given through the tax abatement, but the city has found it to be successful. So there might be some lessons. It doesn't have to be to the extent that the city started, since Cincinnati started, but some level of incentive definitely drives economic development. And there's data from City of Cincinnati to prove that. And Chuck, you could talk a little bit more about that. Yeah. The 2009 International Energy Conservation Code baseline was a little higher than the 2030 challenge target. And then our design, all of the improvements that we suggested for this home, at the end of it, got us to about, just little under 30 EUI, right? Actually, a little over 20, EUI. And then once we improved the energy efficiency of the home, then we offset it with renewable energy. We add the solar panels, and once we add the solar panels, then we are coming down to close to an EUI of 11, 12. So that's the opportunity, starting from 85, 90, coming down all the way to 10, about 60, 70% energy improvement is what we were able to achieve on a historic home while respecting all of the contributing characteristics of this home.
What's the difference between the red and the yellow?
So those are different components of each bars. It's how much energy is being used for heating, how much energy is used for cooling, how much energy is used in appliances. So that's what we would call as an energy profile of a home. So.
What kind of an ROI are you looking at? How many years?
I think this home is unique because I think the owners had the budget to put into it. So it may not be the best example. Best example to look at the ROI. I don't think we were tracking it. Obviously, maybe this. I get this question often is like, what's the ROI? Whenever we talk about energy efficiency, solar panels, what's the ROI? And I always say that when we put that $20,000 countertop or $10,000 granite countertop in the house, nobody asks the ROI on it. And I think I almost say it in every presentation that nobody asks the ROI. I just want that granite countertop, period. I think it would be great if solar panels became that. It would be great if high efficiency equipment became that in our houses, that I just want solar panels on the house because I like them and I want it, you know. It would be nice to get there, but hopefully we'll get there. So this is just a quick overview of what are the areas. Some of them I already touched. Rainwater capture is one of the strategies we used in here. Solar renewable energy. Efficient envelope, I'm going to talk a little bit. What did we do to the building to make it more efficient in terms of walls? Earlier we were saying, I think Crew was mentioning that the walls are, one of the areas in historic buildings that we need to add insulation to. So how do we do that in an appropriate way? Efficient windows, we did replace the windows on this project with new Pella windows, high efficiency windows. Reduce equipment load. This is the appliances. If we use more efficient appliances, that reduces the load. Lighting, if we use LED in terms of in lieu of fluorescent, uses less energy, that reduces the load also. Reducing water use. This has a dual benefit, an energy benefit and a water efficiency benefit also. So if you use less hot water, your energy bill is going to be less, and obviously you're using less water, so that's a water energy saving also. And typically we use low flow plumbing fixtures, low flow showers, low flow toilets, and low flow lavatory faucets and Energy Star appliances to improve the water efficiency of the home. Efficient HVAC system. For this particular project, we used a geothermal system, ground source heat pump, and we also use an energy recovery ventilation system to make sure that the air quality of the home stays healthy. Yeah. And reclaimed material, I'll talk a little bit more about in following slides. Essentially the whole building is reclaimed, or 80 to 90% of the building is reclaimed. And that's really the true advantage of this. So the wall systems, the existing wall is a brick wall, much like a lot of historic buildings. It becomes harder to insulate these unless you lose a lot of room on the inside of the home. And if the homes are small, which they tend to be, you don't want to lose 6 inches on both sides by insulating them. So in this particular case, we used a unique product. It's called InsoFast, which is 2 inches of rigid insulation. And it comes with these plastic strips in it. So you can attach drywall, and the drywall can nail directly into those plastic strips. So you don't need any framing, wood framing or anything. So 2 advantages of it. One, the system becomes really thin, about 2.5 inches. You can get R10 continuous insulation, which is really great. And then the second advantage is that you don't have any broken insulation. It's all continuous insulation. It doesn't get broken by wood or metal studs or anything, which is a huge advantage also. So really, I mean, as good as it gets, probably the best you can do on a historic home without losing too much space. I think Crew or Jim had mentioned earlier about envelope, air sealing, blower door test. I think, Jim, you were talking about. So we want to make sure that the home is not leaky after doing all of this. So some of the spray foam that you're seeing at the band joist up here, that's critical. Those tend to be some of the most leaky areas in a historic home with brick, where your joist is going into that brick wall. To the naked eye, it may not seem that, but there's always air coming through the cracks in the mortar, and that finds its way right at. So it's one of those weak spots we would recommend, doing some spray foam insulation to air seal that. And then the key thing about this is this particular corner that you're seeing in the image right now. This is that corner actually. So pre-renovation, it was a dilapidated structure with all this trim. All of that trim was taken out. Then we did the insulation. And then after doing the insulation, all of the trim was applied back again. So on 3 floors in that condition, we did the same. So that's really maybe the main celebration on this home. Yeah. And then so all the technical aspects of it, how do we improve the wall system? How do we change the windows, mechanical systems? I think we have enough ways to do it and enough expertise in our city that we can guide you through this process. I think at a high level, what is the benefit of doing all of this? And when we did the Green Historic Study for that adjacent building that I mentioned earlier, which was a Habitat for Humanity project, Habitat for Humanity typically builds new buildings, and they do a really good job. They're super efficient new homes that they make. They build it at low budget, and they do it really well. We wanted to test the idea of how does it compare if Habitat renovated a historic building. And the key reason being, historic communities are important. They have stories, they stay intact. There are a lot of, there's an asset there. There's a community asset there that stays with it. Whereas new construction, we could be making them efficient and we could be building them far away, not in a historic community. But when economy goes down, like the 2009 economic crisis we see, those communities disappear. But the historic communities, they are resilient. People are attached to them. People have stories that go after generation to generation. So there is that intangible intrinsic value that we see that holds these communities together. So how do we add to that and try to make these communities survive better? So when we did the study, the Green Historic Study, we compared if Habitat didn't do a new construction home elsewhere in a faraway neighborhood and renovated a home in Over the Rhine, what would be the embodied energy that would be saved by reusing an existing building? So we closely looked at all of the pieces that are used, like trim, 90% of it was reused, flooring, 67% was reused, walls, 69% were reused, foundation, reclaim, total reclaim was 74%, and the total retrofit was 26%. And then what does this mean at the end of it in terms of embodied energy? So say the home started in 1870, and since it was an inefficient home, year over year, it used a certain amount of operational energy year over year. This is our existing starting point where we said it uses a lot of energy because it's leaky, it's inefficient, and so on. Then we come to 2015, around maybe 2016, 17, the blue bar that you see, that's where we invested a little bit more energy into it to create the renovation. We reuse most of the materials, but we put a little bit more energy to get us to this efficient. The moment we put it into use, we reduce that operational energy every year by about 88% in terms of embodied energy. So most of that is operational energy. We reduce that, and then now, since 2020 or so, after it's been put into use, it uses less energy and we save that much amount of carbon. So the carbon offset is reduced by that. So this is a graph just to represent that. And then similarly, another way of looking at it, there are 3 bars on this graph, which scenario A shows you this yellow line, which is starting in 2018, it continues to use a lot of energy, that's our non-retrofit scenario. And then the orange bar, scenario B, is our retrofit without the solar panels. And we are saying, okay, we use less energy year over year because we are saving that much embodied energy. And then the last bar, the blue one, is if we added solar panels, it uses even less energy than that one. So when we looked at the Habitat for Humanity case study, we actually compared the existing building and a hypothetical model for new construction also, just to show how much the saving was. That one.
Well, thank you very much, Sanyog. That's very, very interesting. I love the Meyer home down that we have building tours with the U.S. Green Building Council, and we toured that home virtually. It was excellent. But I'm here to talk about the Frank Lloyd Wright House that Jan and I purchased in 2003. Even though I had a career in marketing, I was studying architecture at the University of Kentucky, and when that house went up for auction, and 2 weeks later we were the owner, I rekindled my interest in architecture. But I'm just here to tell you what we did to this house that everybody can do. Really simple things that really can cut your energy use by 2/3. So the first winter, the heating bill was $600 a month. It's pretty frightening. Immediately, I put insulation on the roof. It's a flat roof, so I just put insulation up there and ballasted it. we caulked a lot. I caulked all the seams in the house, and that was amazing. We actually took the air infiltration from 8 air changes per hour to 4 air changes per hour. The next thing we did was we've got all this 450 square foot of plate glass facing south. So it's time for a drape upgrade. So we bought double drapes and we put space blanket in between the drapes. So this reflects the radiant floor heating from the floor heating in the house. It also reflects the sunlight from the exterior of the house. And another thing we did was to put external shades in these bays that you see so we put bamboo blinds. They didn't go all the way down, but they went down and they really just blocked the sun. So we really paid a lot of attention to the solar heat gain. Then we redid the air conditioning in the addition, and we put a mini split system in, which was much better than the old heat exchanger that was in the wall and air conditioning. So this was the foam that we injected into the concrete block of the house. This was a really big deal. There was nothing in this concrete block when they built the house. There wasn't even any vermiculite like they put in a later addition. So they pumped all this foam in all the vertical columns in this concrete block. It's only 8 inches wide. That's all that our house was made out of. And it was amazing. It really gave us a vapor barrier. I mean, it was like living in a screen door. But that's an excellent thing. You see that advertised all the time on the television. You just got to do it. It just improves the comfort and the energy efficiency. It immediately cut our energy bills by 20%. Well, here shows the insulation that we put on the roof. So it's just ballasted. The Historical Preservation Association, they didn't mind. I'm not allowed to change anything on the exterior of the house, but this insulation wasn't attached to the house. So this shows the addition where I put the mini split in the addition, which was turned into the master bedroom. That just shows the one corner of the house. We reforested the lot. So the house was originally designed to be in a conifer forest in Oakland, California, for the Sturtevants. But the Bolters, Patricia, her parents had built the Frank Lloyd Wright house with Mr. Wright, and Mr. Wright said he would build her a home or design her a home when she got married. So her husband, Cedric Bolter, they're both classic professors at UC, decided to do it, and the Sturtevants never built the home. This was a very steep 2-story. It required a 2-story lot, or 2-story construction because the lot was so small and steep. And so this house fit that plan perfectly, except it wasn't in a forest. The Bolters were very private and never did anything with the landscape. So honeysuckle just grew up around the house and pretty much acted as their little reforestation. But when David Gosling came to the University of Cincinnati to teach, because he could live in this house, he clear cut everything. And he put spotlights on the house that came on at 10 o'clock at night, or up till 10. He was just so proud of the house. But this just made the heat gain just all the more. It's unbelievable. It's like being in an easy bake oven. But so you can see the bamboo shades that I have in some of the bays there. But at any rate, we reforested the lot, and it really improved the beauty and the natural looking out and seeing the canopy during the summer, because you can use that sunlight in the winter. It was a National Wildlife Federation certified habitat. We had pollinator. We planted all the front of the house with pollinator flowers, put brush huts in back for small animals and birds to hide in, And it was really made the house really just merge into the landscape. So with that and all those things that we did and some better windows up in the Clare Story area, we changed the EUI, the Energy Utilization Index, which is 1,000 kilobtu's per square foot per year, from 90 to 30. So we had a 2/3 improvement in the energy efficiency, and my bill, in a terrible winter month, was $200 instead of $600. But the house was just so much more comfortable. You talked about solar panels. I considered solar panels because we've got a nice flat roof, but we wound up selling the house in 2019. And something to keep in mind is that we would have needed to get our EUI down below 40 before you should consider solar panels. So you're better off insulating or sealing your home so you can get your energy efficiency down. But really the reason, when we sold the house, I got solar panels and Janet got hardwood floors. So I immediately put solar panels on my house because I agree with Sanyog. We know better. Our culture was such an energy hog. We're using 4 times the planet's resources. It's wonderful to live here in the U.S., but we know better. We can do better. And those solar panels don't cost a dime. You will get them back. Your house is worth 4% more. You just put solar panels on it. So it's paying it there. It'll be paid off in 12 years. But the point is, it just doesn't matter. Yes?
Can you explain what you were talking about? You said you put in double drapes with something in between the...
Yeah, so we got there and it just had a single drapes, but then we ordered new drapes, but they didn't cut them right. They made them too small, so they gave us an extra pair. So I just put both of them in there, double drapes, and I learned from James Marston Fitch, who is a architecture professor at UC. He wrote a book about architecture and what we learned about going to the moon and how that changed the way buildings were built. And what we learned was a radiant surface, something that reflects even your own body heat, can make it much more comfortable. So I learned that you just go get Space Blanket, which is camping gear, and it's just a thin Mylar, but you just line your drapes. So then when we close the drapes, the radiant heat from the floor would just bounce back into the room, and during the summer, the sunlight that got through our exterior blinds, would just reflect back out. So it's a really cool little trick, and it was pretty significant in this house with all that glass. So just to end, we considered LEED, but we didn't want to replace the single pane glass, which is part of the building's design, and it's just you just shouldn't do that to this house.
Sustainability is challenging, but I want to show you one project which is not historic. This is about 340,000 square feet research lab we designed for University of Kentucky. Every floor is a lab where you have to exhaust 100% air. So you're not allowed to recirculate. So this building consumes a lot of energy. You can see all those fans on the top. So it's very difficult to achieve LEED certification using that. But what we have done is that building envelope, triple pane windows, a lot of insulation, geothermal. It doesn't have geothermal on site, but the COP building, the chiller plant, is very efficient for this building. But the technology is there right now, which can simulate the buildings, how they're going to perform, how they're going to react, what kind of energy consumption they're going to have before you want to build it. It's a virtual model like a car. We can predict how it's going to operate. So technology is there. You can predict your house and put that house in some of the simulation model, and you can apply different R value insulation, and it tells you that how much your saving going to be. And this got LEED gold. We wanted to shoot for silver, and we ended up with gold. We're very proud. That was one of Jim, his project. and it's a very complex calculation system back there. We want to also include another project that is not residential, but it's a McCracken Hall at OU. We did an addition, which is right here, it's an addition to existing hall, and we wanted to make sure that we look and match the existing construction. But the university architects had a request. This building going to perform really well. What about my old building? So we done a lot of the technique what Sanयोग showed for the small house. Same thing for the whole residential building. And this one was silver, right?
It was also gold.
It's gold. All right, I'm wrong. But you can see that some of the we added some of the lobby areas and stuff, but we kept the existing brick. We matched the brick. We reused the material as much as possible on this building. So we want to talk about incentives. There are federal incentives. We'll cover that quickly. There are not many Ohio state incentives, and hopefully that will change. But City of Cincinnati is a great model, and there are a few other communities, Madera, Sycamore, Terrace Park. They have really good incentive, the tax incentive to incentivize owners to apply this sustainability LEED certification. And I don't know where Wyoming stands and how can we change, but maybe we should all write to our city council. We are mayor here, so. It's a good model. There are some smaller communities like Wyoming has done that, and anytime there is a tax incentive, even if what Sanयोग said, that don't ask ROI, just do it. But every incentive helps. So here I'm not a CPA, and this slide is really about interpreting the law just passed last year, Inflation Reduction Act, which nobody read. So now everybody's reading it and figuring it out how we can reap the benefit of it. But the gist of is that solar energy, heat pumps, anytime you're doing any sustainable upgrade to your existing system, electric vehicles, there are a lot of credits baked into this Inflation Reduction Act. There are some ties associated with that. Certain things has to be made in the USA. But for an example, geothermal is 33% incentivized. You get a rebate the same year. You have to do it in 2023, and you have to hire a contractor who understands this IRA Act, can do paperwork for you, certify that most of the material they are using is made in USA. I'm installing one for a cancer center in Paducah, Kentucky, and we cut down our mechanical system by 30%. And the owner gonna get this money this year, and they're gonna reap the benefit over next 40 years. And if any of you are involved with nonprofit, church, or school, this IRA bill included nonprofits, which was not the case before. Anytime they always excluded nonprofit. So a lot of hospitals, a lot of universities, school district, they will take advantage of this. If they have air handling unit replacement, now is the time. Apply for IRA tax credit. This involves a CPA because there are a lot of things which this bill is not very clear, but we are trying to clarify and make sure what can be applicable to residential and nonprofit.
I just wanted to mention that this Inflation Reduction Act is going to give nonprofits just a grant to install energy efficiency measures. As I mentioned, I'm on the board of the CAC, and I applied for and received a Helen Frankenthaler Institute grant, which pays for the level 3 audit that's required of the CAC to prove that we can save 25% on our energy efficiency. Now we'll be able to go and apply for this Investment Reduction Act funds. So it's easy to do. I learned about it from the 2030 district. Give me a call, the church, or I'm actually familiar with your art center here and helping them to get this Frankenthaler grant. and then apply for these funds.
Well, I was trying to look if we have any LEED certified home in Wyoming. I couldn't find one, but then Sanyog mentioned one of the house you certified, right?
810 Burns, I think Sarah Ashleman, who owns the community, the Wyoming community coffee shop. So we LEED certified her home. She's an architect herself, yeah. So she obviously designed it, and then we did the consulting, which is the third-party verification for it for her home. It's a wonderful home. You probably, some of you might know it.
There's also one up on the pike, all the way up, not quite up to Tila, but on that same side, there's a maple.
Okay.
That I think dark green or grays out exterior siding, and you can sort of tell it's got all the big beautiful windows, and it had all the LEED markers on it for a couple of years.
Yeah, I think.
There are a couple.
Yeah, so Cincinnati region in general is very aggressively designing and going for these credits as well as certification. Most of the government buildings and most of the universities are given. It has to be silver, and sometimes even more. So I think there are a lot of resources. There are a lot of resources in the room. We have this slide up here. I'm not a residential architect, but these two are, and they do good work and good consulting. And can you tell a little bit more about the resource for your green initiative at the downtown, your building?
CAC,
Not CAC, your
my office
yeah.
for Green Source.
Yes, green source. Just a little bit about that.
Yeah, I do LEED certifications, but I do it for commercial buildings. So first thing I did, I had my office, it was on the second floor of a row house down on Washington Park. So I worked hard on that project and got LEED Platinum, but we were just very conscientious about all the ways to get points. Like we had no construction waste. I mean, I really didn't do much to the office. I just put some carpet down, and the carpet scraps I shipped to Seattle, where they would recycle them all. Also then I did the LEED certification on an 1875 house on 7th Street that Ez House turned into his home and his business, which was selling energy efficiency components to server farms. But it was a beautiful old house that he completely renovated and achieved LEED Platinum. He did an energy model for that part of that project, but he did all the things that I did for the Bolter house. Super insulate the envelope and seal the envelope. He had radiant floors on his apartment on the 3rd floor. So it was a really nice project, a historical project to work on 8th Street, right across from the library. And there's still a tax abatement in the city of Cincinnati for commercial projects. You can go from a 10-year tax abate, you can get an additional 2 years for commercial projects. And currently I'm working on Enriching Spaces, their offices out in Forest Park, to get LEED gold on that. We've got 4 LEED home tours scheduled with the U.S. Green Building Council chapter. This is a home in Blue Ash that's LEED Platinum that we're going to tour. And then we're going to tour another home in Mount Airy that, besides being LEED Platinum, is also going to become, I believe, the first passive house in the region. Now, I talked about having an air changes per hour of 4. The air changes per hour to meet passive house standards is 0.6. So in homes that are that tightly sealed, you need to have a ventilation system. So it's no heating or cooling going on, but it's just ventilating the house because it's so airtight. So we hope to see you all.
I don't understand the certification system completely. If you live in Cincinnati and get a tax rebate, great. But if you're in Forest Park, say, what does it do for you besides a good feeling?
Well, you'll have the highest performing house, much higher the performing than your.
Certified. Is that? do something for you?
Just, it's a third-party certification of your builder, and it's shown that your house will perform, or your building will perform 15% better if you have a third party certify the work that your contractors did. So that's really the big benefit to having a home. And for a home, I would just start with HERS certification. It's home energy something, but it's the standard for just checking your house, and it'll check everything. It'll be a third-party certification. It's not near as expensive as LEED, but we've got great resources here to do that. It's called HERS, HERS. Yes?
I was going to ask the panel if a lot of the homes here in Wyoming are built out of wood clapboard. I think probably in the historic district, there's probably 75% or more rather than brick. So if your home is built out of wood clapboard and your walls are plaster and you have no insulation, which most of them didn't when they were built in the late 1800s, what do you recommend then?
Well, you pump foam in that cavity. You pump foam in the 3-inch cavity all the way up, all the whole, pump it wherever you can in that cavity between the plaster and the exterior cladding.
Out from the outside or from the inside?
They usually do it from the outside. They drill little holes and then pump the foam in the columns and then seal up the holes.
Yeah, probably. I mean, we look at maybe 2 or 3 options. One of them, what just Chuck mentioned. And then so we did another home in Northside, which was not in the historic designated district. So I don't know the Wyoming community, whether all of these homes that we're talking about, are they designated historic homes or it's a historic community? If that is the case, then there is an option of cladding it with insulation on the outside. So in the north side brick home, we actually clad the insulation with 4 inches of insulation on the outside. But jokingly, we call it the Yeti cooler approach. So essentially, we just wrap it from the outside. But that one is actually a net positive home. So we reduced the energy efficiency of it. We applied Passivhaus principles, reduced the energy efficiency to close to 80, 90, and then he put solar panels on it. So not only he does not have an energy bill, but he actually charges an electric car with the solar panels on top of that. So
It sells energy.
yeah, exactly. So that one. So there are different ways. We could clad from the outside. It might affect the aesthetic a little bit, but if we're working with an architect who is sensitive enough, then we may be able to make that work. Depending on that, it's like different shades of it. And then the one on the inside that I talked about, that 2 inches of InsoFast insulation is always an option on a plaster wall that you could do without doing it. So I think there are multiple options that you want to talk, and that's probably how we would approach it.
I just wanted to add that is the trend of how we're insulating buildings now. Rather than putting it in the cavity, we're seeing it. It's already made that trend. That's how we do new construction for commercial buildings already. All the insulation is moved outside. So that case, that product, or that trend is making its way into residential as well. So that approach of moving all the insulation to the outside, that's really where things are heading.
Yeah, and the reason for that, you're seeing that as a trend, outside or inside, both of those options are continuous insulation. Yeah. Because one of the key things with Passivhaus principle, we are trying to minimize that thermal bridge that happens through elements that are poking through and through. So both of those options. I think spray foam in the cavity, we've done that on projects also. The limitation is you don't know what is in the cavity.
Right.
So you're just relying on this sort of nebulous way, like, there are some voids in there, filling that void and you're leaving it at that. So I don't think, if you're trying to get to like 2050 carbon neutrality challenge, then it's a little bit compromised approach.
So then roofs too, would you recommend that when we re-roof in this community, we put insulation on the outside?
Yeah, the Yeti cooler is a Yeti cooler. It's all sides of it. So that home in north side that we did, it's actually 4 inches of continuous insulation all the way around from the top. And then in the basement, we spray foam insulation on the inside.
Is the foam proof fireproof?
It's a very good question. Yeah, so you do need to protect it either with a drywall layer or an intumescent coating, which you guys might know
So
use more about.
the foam will burn.
the foam will burn, and it's toxic when it burns. So, which is why you need to protect. Yeah, exactly. So there is, you want to protect it properly. There are, if you're using it, you want to make sure that you're taking the right measures to use it.
It need to be sealed and into cement paint cover. If it's exposed, you have to cover with into cement paint. That is just a layer which will bond and create a layer of foam, so the fire won't get to the combustible foam insulation.
Is the foam approved in California? You know, the cancer warnings that are on the main products, is that approved in California?
Yeah, the foam that was used in my house is just foamed latex paint. So it was non-toxic. That was used in the process that was used in my home.
Right, there are different kinds. Right, the polyurethane foam is harmful. The isonine foam is not harmful or less harmful.
Yeah, you have multiple options in that regard to which one you can use. If you are working with LEED certification, there are certain chemicals we use in this product are not allowed, even inside or outside. But there are multiple choices available for you to use.
I do want to add that one thing that really came out of the LEED certification and everything we're doing on buildings is what you'll see when you go. Has anyone painted their home recently? You'll see that low VOC paint, low volatile organic compounds, that really developed coming out of this LEED process of looking at materials and how things are developed and making things non-toxic. So the whole point of low VOC paint that you can now buy at Home Depot and Lowe's really developed out of this process and is trying to make the interior environments more healthy.
I also wanted just to mention, I have a renovation project I'm working on right now that was it tow got on the inside and the out. So the outside got foam insulation. Didn't put it on the roof, but I would like to kick myself for that. But the inside I'm using sheep's wool, which is a product that was developed for vans when people started converting their vans into camper vans that people who live in their vans. And now has become popular enough that they make it in standard residential 16-inch to center sizes, and it is the most wonderful product I think I've ever worked with inside a house because it's wool. It's like putting a sweater in your walls, and you can use your bare hands. You don't get all itchy when you're installing it. It smells a little bit like a farm when you first put it in, but it is really a wonderful substance. So if you're looking for a non-toxic thing, yeah, they're comparable with the same sizes of fiberglass. And it doesn't slump the way fiberglass does. So if fiberglass gets wet for any reason, it slumps. And you get that nasty, gluey, yellow.
Yeah.
Sheep's wool doesn't do that. It gets wet and then, like a sheep, it dries back out again. And I think that's pretty high sound insulation.
Yeah, and insulation will use its effective R value when it gets wet.
Pardon?
Insulation will lose its effective R value when it gets wet.
Yeah.
So that's just so some of the insulation we.
Yeah, you use it like standard insulation. So you put it within the base. So it does have the problem that, because there's contact through the wood, you're losing that. But
Right.
the exterior foam, I'm hoping that will stop that problem. But you just put it in the base, staple it in there. It's easy to put up, it's easy to install, it's easy to cut. It's a wonderful product.
Yeah, it's a great product. Anytime we use something in a cavity with the metal stud or the wood stud, the effective R value is half because of every 16-inch is thermally broken. You've been a very good audience. Thank you all.